Namaskar and good afternoon to everyone. My name is Deva Mitra, and on behalf of Kalinga Literary Festival, I welcome you all to today's Bhava Samvad session. So, today's session is very special and it is about the newly published book, The Gorkha Grief, authored by Tim Gurung, who will be in conversation with Ranjit Rai, former Indian ambassador. I now request both our dignitaries, both our speakers, to begin with the session discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and namaste to Tim and to everybody who's watching this program. And it's a special privilege for me to engage in this conversation on Mr. Gurung's latest book, which is titled "The Gorkha Grief." I would have some questions on the title when we begin our discussion, but having read this book in some detail, it's very well researched. It has a lot of information, lot of new information. And what really attracted me was the fact that it not only talks about the Nepalese soldiers, the Gorkhas who joined various armies, over the last 200 years, but it also spoke about the Nepalese diaspora as a whole, and that is the Nepalese that have migrated to foreign countries in search of a better life, in search of employment. And as an Indian, what appealed to me also was the fact, that there is a large chunk of the book that is devoted to India. As you know, India has a very large Nepalese population, both of Nepalese Gorkhas and, of course, our own Nepalese citizens. So for me, perhaps, this is the most interesting part of the book. And, as far as I know, this is perhaps the first time that anyone has written such a book on the Nepali diaspora. So I would strongly recommend all our viewers to get a copy and read it if you want to know more about the Nepalese in foreign lands. So congratulations, Tim, and well done. And it's a pleasure to meet with you, even though it's virtually and not in actual, in reality. You're sitting in Hong Kong, I believe. I'm in New Delhi. But this is the magic of the virtual world, that we can talk to each other at the same time. My first question to you, your title, you have called it Gorkha Grief. And that is such a serious title. And, while reading through the book, I felt that there was a lot of angst, a lot of anguish about the fact that Nepalese have moved abroad, have lived abroad, have worked abroad. Many have done well abroad, as you yourself have done. So why did you think of this title? And how do you assess the overall issue of Nepalese leaving their homeland to work abroad?
Namaste to everyone. And first of all, thank you, Ambassador Sir, for accepting our request. It's an honor. And I also have read your book about Nepal, so I have been always, as I said, I have always the book is so frank and honest. Everything is in detail. Actually, what happened is, as you know, I myself, I have been living my entire adult life outside Nepal. I joined the British Army at 17. We were directly from the village, So I was only in grade 10 at the time. Then because that time joining the British Army, I was the first and best option for us as a Gurung's family son. So I joined the British Army at 17. Then we came to Hong Kong and did the training, everything. Then after a few years, I realized that it wasn't, as we had always expected. It was very difficult life. It's a tough life, and especially I was a very skinny also, so it became very difficult physically for me too. But anyway, I realized that it wasn't good for me, so I retired earlier. Then work in China, this business, learn business, visit the world, and got a chance to understand the world. Then I worked for the next 50 years. Then suddenly I realized that I've been working since 17, so I should do something more meaningful, or that will make me happy. Then what should I do? Then I used to write before, so let's write. Then I started writing. It was now it's been almost 10 years. Of course, it wasn't easy because I know nobody in the industry, and as a modern writer, I didn't know you also have to wear so many hats at the same time. I had no connections. I know no journalist. I had no friends. So it was a bit tough at the beginning, but luckily the time was with me because I was a semi-retired guy. I had plenty of time. Money wasn't problem, so I toiled on. Then suddenly I had to, because people asked me to write this books about the Gorkhas ourselves, because we have been well known all over the world as a brave soldiers. But are we that brave, or are we that stupid? This sort of things came to my mind, Then it's a very long story, but then I decided to write about the book. But the book also did very well. It was going to be it all published by four different publishers. It's been all over the world. Then the success of the Gorkha book was beyond my expectations. The reason for that was because that was the first Gorkha book written by actual Gorkhas. Because until then, all the Gorkha books were written by outsider, probably from India or the British officer, and they always write from their own way. As I always say, you must write your own history. If you let other people to write his history, of course, you won't be the same. So, as a Gorkha, myself as a Gurung, I thought that it's my responsibility as a writer to write our own story. So, it, until then, I also thought that the story was one-sided. So until we wrote ourselves, it couldn't be completed. That's why I wrote the story. It's a very brief story but it completed the entire story of the history of the Gorkhas from 1815 to 2018. So I came from a Gurung family, which is the Gorkha family village. I served in the army. I know how it works. I also work in the business, visited the world. So I also had the opportunity to compare those things, what we're getting, what is the world was having, all these things. So the book did very well. Actually, it did change the very definition of the Gurkhas. So now even international writers, documentary makers talk about this book. But at the same time, what happened is I got some complaints, let's say grievances or some comments from the Indian side, that there's also a big number of Indian Gurkhas living in India. Some say 10 million, others say 15 million. Probably the number is very big. But we also have an Indian Gurkhas, so still serving in the Indian National Army. So I thought that since I started the Gurkha saga, why don't so I go there and combine the British, sorry, the soldiers and civilian as well, and make a book itself. That was the reason why I come up with this book. Then I went there after the pandemic, spent 4 months in Nepal and India. I visited the north, west, and northeast, Dehradun, Nainital, all those places, Darjeeling, Sikkim, Kalimpong, Guwahati. Even I went to the Meghalaya, the Gorkha villages, and talk about this. So this is the that is, then after that I come back, write the book, and that's what's in your hand. The final result is in your hand. The reason I put the Gorkha grief is it actually is come from the Nepali itself. It means Gorkhaliko Dukh. Actually, it's a long and a very prolonged dukh. The grief that has been continued for generation after generation. And the problem is, I find quite amazing that nobody seems to ask this question until now. So I thought that maybe I should ask this question, and all those difficult questions, and find out why our Gurkhas must go outside their country, live in such a dire and inhuman or in so exploited, so bad conditions, and honor a living. Why? And in 200 years, more than 200 years, and then that means 5, 6, 7, 8 generations. Why it has to continue that long? Why we cannot change this? And I come up with many questions, and that was the reason why this is actually about our own grief. So it's more about our stressing out, expressing our own grief than anything else. So at the same times, I think if I ask these difficult questions, maybe our new generation will realize this thing, because Nepali people are, to be honest, mostly very simple, happy, and joyful people. They don't like serious stuff. But at the same time, this is about your future. This is about you. You should at least you can joke about anything else, but not about your own life. That's the serious thing. So I try to put this serious thing, and like sir said, I think this is the probably the first book that has combined, the struggle, the plights, and the aspiration of the Indian domicile Gurkhas, both army and civilians, uh, in a single book. So I'm quite happy, and that I feel lucky that I got to do this. So that was the reason. So it's actually our own pain. So
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And from what you said, I have so many questions in my mind. Migration is not a phenomenon only limited to Nepal. Even Indians, there are more than 15 million Indians who traveled abroad looking for better opportunities. The same thing with the Chinese. Hong Kong, for instance, or Taiwan, or Singapore. So people have moved abroad for better opportunities, have done well. I remember 30 years ago in India, we used to talk about the brain drain. Our educated people are leaving. But today, we take great pride in the fact that the diaspora has done extremely well, and they are now contributing to the home country. Of course, many have become citizens of foreign countries, but still retain some sort of a connect. So I think now we feel that there may have been a negative element earlier, but now there is a positive element. So in this sense, how is the Nepali diaspora experience different from those of the other diaspora? So that is one point in my mind. And the second point, of course, when you
can
spoke
I
about.
go for this one, sir?
Okay, please,
Okay.
please.
I totally agree with you, sir. Globalization is the phenomena. Now the limitation is there is no limitation. You can go anywhere, you can do anyone, and you can do whatever you like. It's all it's not a big problem. But the problem with it is whether you go abroad by force or by choice. That's what I'm trying to say. Because by choice, you have a choice. You can stay in your country, leave your country. If I had a choice, of course I would have stayed in Nepal. As simple as that. But the problem with Nepal is, as you read on the book, no industry, job is scarce. People are the villages are empty. And corruption is rife. Everything is thing, and the the youth, the countries, and to be honest with you, now Nepal's only export is it's youth. And when you, and as you know, the youth is the precious, the most important asset of any country. So if you can have a situation where our youth can have a choice to stay, whether stay in Nepal and serve the country or do something, go outside, that can be beneficial for both your personally, for you personally, and also the country, learn some new trades and come back, do something, then there would have been no problem with us at all. But the problem with Nepal is the youth are forced to go abroad. Because the future in there is bleak. That is the only problem I have with it. Otherwise, I don't have any problem at all for migration. But at the same time, we have been doing this for 200 years. For example, like you say, sir, about the Chinese, when we started at the beginning in Hong Kong, 1890, whenever I watched the news, there was always the Chinese. Whenever there was a news about the illegal migrants, things like that, but you almost hear about this story. The reason why, because now they are rich enough, they have choice to stay back at home. They don't have to go abroad and become an illegal immigrant. But in our but in contrary, in Nepal the situation is different. Everybody think about going abroad. When I was in Kathmandu last time, I saw every youth only reason, only wish they have is how to get out of Nepal once there is the certain age, certain education. But the problem with it is, you can go outside. There's the problem with Nepal is there's so many manpower. There's human trafficking. The manpower agencies, they are unscrupulous, and they are not very responsible. At the same times, when you go outside that country, I mean, my point is, when you supply a manpower from one country to the other country, these two countries should have a treaty, or sign a treaty that stipulate or all the terms and conditions, pay, salary, work condition, all these things, right? But in Nepal, they don't have it. At the same time, most of them are illegal. So these people, these young people, very young, green, they've been in the village, come out in Kathmandu, line up, make a passport and go out, pay 5 lakh, 10 lakh rupees, buy loan, getting loan from somebody, borrow money from somebody, pay this, and go outside. They have no knowledge whatsoever about the outside world.
No, I agree with
Yeah,
what you said. And, in fact, one of the former Nepalese ambassador to one of the Gulf countries had told me that, they're almost working in conditions like slavery in
yeah,
some of these
exactly.
Gulf countries and earning very little money, very little
Exactly.
money.
Exactly.
And a lot of them were unskilled people. So, I agree entirely with you that these manpower agencies need to be regulated. Perhaps the people who are going abroad have to be better trained, better
Better
skilled,
train.
more
Exactly. Yeah.
aware.
Yeah.
And as you said, there has to be bilateral agreement. So there is some
Yeah.
basic minimum wage. And I believe the Nepalese government has now entered into some agreements with some countries. But let me just move on to the military side of the Gorkhas, since
Okay.
you're an ex-soldier, and you were saying that the Gorkhas are known for their bravery, and I just want to quote what Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw had said. He was a Gorkha officer himself, and you also referred to it. And basically, he said is, when someone says he's not afraid to die, he's either lying or is a Gorkha. So this was a very high tribute, and India has been very proud of this tradition. And you have so much detail about how the various Gorkha battalions were established in British India, and thereafter independence. So I was, but the sense I get is that even this historical relationship of Nepal, with the Indian and the British armies through the Gorkha connection, is perhaps not as rosy as is made out to be. I mean, this is the impression I get from your book. And I was just wondering whether you would compare, say the soldiers that from Nepal that were working in the Indian Army, working in the British Army, working in the Nepalese Army. Uh, what more do you think needs to be done to improve this? And after this, I want to go over to this Agniveer question, which is
Mm.
very important issue.
I think the most, as I already wrote on the IO Gorkhali, whatever you have just said about the Field Marshal Mackinson, that's the right thing. But that was a long time ago. And the Gorkha had already their glory in First World War and Second World War. But that was already the past. But once the British moved to the Southeast Asia, Malaysia and Singapore, you know what they did was they matched the salary and the welfare, those pension, everything of the British Gorkha to the Indian Gorkhas, so they can be equal. They won't have a big difference between them. But that was, I think, it's a kind of a cheat, because you are not living in India anymore. You're living in Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, or whatever. But that is already the past. Now they moved to UK, and then they still have those problems. But they still have this Gorkha Justice campaign is there still going on. But the problem now is what happened is when the British Army, British Gorkha, when they join the British Army now, they take about 150 to 300 per year now. When they go there, and if they work after 4 years, they will automatically qualify for the British residency. So there's no problem, that big problem there. But only problem now is those Gorkha veterans who retire after World War II to 1994 before they left Hong Kong, because their pension, as I said, is in comparison to the British was less, tenfold less, 10 times less. So they have been fighting for this that one. They also had a hunger strike, and in front of the Downing Street, they had a talk. The talk is still going on. Then it's still there's nothing going on. And as you know how the British work, they will just find a way to delay, and they are not making thing. But after serving for 200 years, the legacy of the British, their loyal and their service, unparalleled bravery, whatever service. To be honest, of course. This was the propaganda and the narratives made by the British from the beginning, because the British always wrote about the his Gorkha history. There was nobody from the Gorkhas team within the Gorkha community who could write and counterbalance the thing before my book came out. Only when my book Gorkha came out, then it has changed now. A little bit, but in a small way, but still it counterbalanced the thing. But still they're going on. But I think uh, in comparison to Nepal army, India and British, I was when I was in Nepal last time, I also talked with Nepal army. I think now that there's not a big gap, because everything is already improved in comparison to those before. Now even the Nepal army, the pay seems quite okay. Also the welfare facility seems okay. I think Indian also is okay. Not very good, but it's still okay. They have free medicals, all these things. Also, I think it's better. But for the British, of course, now they get more or less the same as the British soldiers. So that's quite different. But the problem is the number is just a very small. So uh, I don't think it make any difference, because see that in Nepal you have a 16 million workforce, and you have this 200 people going there. Does it make anything? I don't think so. So
So I want to now turn to this whole Agniveer question. This is this new recruitment policy for all soldiers in the Indian Army. and they're recruited for 4 years, and after 4 years, 75% retire and 25% are taken on. And ever since this policy has been introduced, the intake of the Nepalese Gorkhas into the Indian Army has stopped. And these days I've been reading in the newspapers about how Nepali youngsters are joining the Russian army and the Ukraine army and so on. And I was wondering, why there is a reluctance on the part of Nepal to send people under this Agniveer scheme, because this scheme is the same now for Indians and for Nepalis. All recruitment into the Indian army is now on this basis. And I was just thinking to myself, with such a long historical relationship, this will come to an end if either the Agniveer scheme doesn't change, or if the Nepalese government doesn't change its view on the scheme. So what is your view? What do you think should be done? Because we really cherish this relationship, and it's a very important part of the bilateral relationship between the two countries.
I think the biggest issue is the tripartite treaty that the British, India, and Nepal signed in 1947. And the Brigade of Gorkhas in the British Army, Indian Army, are still governed by this treaty. But the problem with this treaty was that was 75 years, 76 years ago, and all the provision there is not really relevant anymore. That is the biggest problem. Then I think also the Agniveer policy goes against that treaty, because the Nepalis are the Gorkhas in British Army normally used to serve 15 years to get a qualify for a pension. But in the Indian Army, it was 22 years. Now suddenly it became a 4 year. So it became kind of India tried to change the treaty unilaterally. That should be the problem. That should be the case. Grievances from the Nepali side. But at the same time, this is not only about India and Nepal. It is India, Nepal, and British. And this 1947 treaty, the tripartite treaty, is already very old, useless. Then they should review the treaty, either directly, either three countries together, or separately with directly with India and directly with the British. But the main, because of that, the 15-year or 20-year service become a 4 year, which is not according to the treaty. So Nepal's problem is that. So I think the first stage we should review the treaty, just create a talk and sign a new treaty. It doesn't have to be between India, Nepal, and British all together. It can be separately. But Nepali leaders' biggest problem is not that. Honestly, it's not that. They don't care about the Nepali people go there, die or live or whatever. They don't care about these people. They only care about their kursi, we say kursi, chair, the power, the position. Their biggest problem is this. If the Gorkhas go to India, according to the Agniveer policy, train as a soldier for 4 years, come back to Nepal, young, trained, and diligent, with no better future and work and opportunity to do something, it can be transformed to a radical youth, which can be a security problems, headaches for Nepali government. That's the only question they have.
I mean, this argument could have been used even for the people who stayed for 15 years, because they're also quite young. They come back, retire at 35, 38, and they could also be radicalized. Like, you had a big Maoist insurgency, but hardly any Gorkhas were involved in that insurgency. And secondly, as far as I know, the treaty talks about equal treatment, that the Nepalese soldiers will be treated on power with Indian soldiers. And, that is the sort of crux of the treaty. And I think India has been doing that. But be that as it may, I hope the two governments will at least sit and negotiate and see how best, how best this relationship can continue. And only today I saw a news report which suggested that our defense minister has said that, if necessary, they will be willing to look at the Agniveer treaty again and review it. So let's hope this very strong bond between India and Nepal continues. I now want to move out to, your experiences in India. And you say that the northwest of India, where you traveled, for you was very different from the northeast of India. And both places have dense Nepali communities. And in Dehradun, you had a certain experience, but when you went to the northeast, to Meghalaya, Assam, and Shillong, you had a different experience. And would you care to tell our viewers in what way this experience was different and what were the reasons for this?
I think when we went to Dehradun, uh, and we went to this Nepalese community. I don't see any sign or the telltale situation that tells these people are Nepali. They were Nepali community lives. They talk. They are more or less like all the Indians, and they talk in Hindi. They would dress like Indian. They dress like they walk like Indian. They eat like Indian, and there's no particular sign or anything that suggests that Nepali peoples are living there. But at the same time, when I moved to even Dehradun, then I went to Nainital, all this Haridwar, all this, they're more or less the same. Although later on, I find out from my people that there were so many people there living because when the Gorkha forces took over this Kumar and Garhwal area in early 18, there are so many people living there. Moving, migrated there and live there. The Nepalese people live there. Also, the western part of Nepal, the migrant workers from there also come there and work all over there. But when I moved to Siliguri, the Darjeeling, the Sikkim area, Kalimpong area, it was exactly like Nepal. Everyone was talking in Nepali, and then, all over the places. So that was the different. But of course, like Guwahati, the Meghalaya, this area was completely same as the Dehradun area, not like the other area. But Dehradun area, but I could still see those Gorkha villages on the roadside, with their typical houses, two-story houses, and the Hindu temples, and with the cow shed, those things. Then I can say, oh, that's the Nepalese
So
village.
it reminded you of
Yeah,
home.
yeah. So that was actually because I've been there. It was my first time in India. So as you know, I come from Hong Kong. Here, you have 24 hours. You can eat, walk, whatever you like. But it was quite an experience for me when I was there. But that was the first time.
Now,
Also,
linked to
I
this,
also blame to the Hollywood movie, but Bollywood. They show you so the even the train. I thought that the traveling train would be quite challenging, but no, it was excellent. I had no problem.
I'm happy to hear that. But
Yeah.
tell me, you also talk about the slightly uneasy relationship between the Nepalese Gorkhas and the Indian Gorkhas. And you speak about this in your book. Can you elaborate on this? Why is there is this uneasy relationship? And what do you think should be done to improve this relationship if, as you say, there is some discontent or there is some problem in this relationship?
I think the main reason I wrote on the book is because of the 1950 Francis Treaty, 1950 Francis Friendship Treaty. Because of that, we have this open border policy for both country. So both citizens from both sides can go, live, work, own a land like that on both sides. So of course, it provided many opportunity for many for both sides. But it's at the same time, what happened is the mainstream Indian mainstream community think that they seem to forget the fact that there is also Indian Gorkhas living in Nepal, sorry, in India for almost 200 years. They are not the Nepalese people, Nepali migrant workers. They're Indian citizens living there for 5 6 generations, and every time I meet them, they all had the same grievances, saying that they always treat them in a way, discriminatory way, that they think everybody, they see from the same one look, see everyone as a Nepali worker coming from Nepal, try to find a work here, and they treat them like or not very well. So this is the problem, the especially for those Indian Indian Gorkhas who have been living there as a citizen for a generation and 200 years, and they think that why do we have to, because we have the Mongolian face, slanted eyes, and a round face like that. Why do we have to prove ourselves that we're the Indians?
This reminds me, yeah, this reminds me very much of the Madhesis in Nepal. Because in Nepal, the people think the Madhesis are actually Indians. And in India, when they come, they also look like Indians to us. So there is this huge identity crisis.
I think
So there are,
it's the same problem on both sides, but
yes.
In Nepal, the problem with them is I think the problem assimilation. There is the biggest problem from the Madhesi group and the Pahadi group. There, even when I visited there in 2018, I will tell you a story that even I saw for the first time when I visited a Madhesi residence, the community. I didn't feel like it was Nepal, honestly. It was completely different than what we have in Pahad, in other part of the Nepal. I think it is also the problem of the two sides. I think the mistrust, the differences, the between them. I think it is because of maybe we are not trying to assimilate together, ingrain in a society and become one. I think that is the biggest problem.
Assimilation, I don't like that word so much, because I am a strong believer in diversity, in pluralism. I think, that actually strengthens our societies. Both India and Nepal are very diverse, pluralistic society. And you yourself said that when you went to certain parts, you didn't think that you were in Nepal because everything was like in India and people had assimilated. So I think diversity is actually a strength. And what is required is not necessarily assimilation, but accommodation of
Yeah,
more
also yeah.
understanding, empathy, sympathy to each other's concerns and issues. But that's a subject for another day. On the
Mm.
1950 treaty, from my perspective, I think the treaty has acted as a huge safety valve in Nepal. I mean, just imagine during the Maoist insurgency, so many young Nepalese came to India, and because of the treaty. If there had been no treaty, then all these people would have been, refugees or illegal migrants, and that would have given rise to a whole lot of other issues. So I know the 1950 treaty is a controversial subject, but if I look at the experience of the last 2 or 3 decades, I think the treaty has released a lot of the pressure that the Nepalese state would have felt had the borders been closed. So that's another interesting element,
Yeah, I agree.
another way of looking at the. I know in Nepal people say it's unequal and so on, and the Nepalese are very keen to change the treaty, and India is quite prepared to do so. Of course, discussions have not started as yet, but I hope we will have a mutually acceptable treaty for both sides. We are close to the 45-minute time for our conversation, but I have one last point,
Okay.
comment, or question. And you don't talk about this, but the glue in the relationship between the East India Company and the British Crown with Nepal was the Gorkha soldiers. And the Gorkha soldiers played a very critical role in supporting the British on the Indian subcontinent. You refer to 1857 as the Sepoy Mutiny and what we in India call the First War of Independence. And some of this, at least in Lucknow, for instance, was suppressed because of Jang Bahadur
Mm.
and the Gorkha soldiers who came to the assistance of the British. And similarly, Jallianwala Bagh also, there were soldiers from the Gorkhas. So I think for the British, the Gorkhas provided a very important insurance policy in terms of helping them whenever they had difficulties in India, providing security to them, as you say, in the northeast, clearing areas and helping with plantations, defending the frontiers. And from my perspective, it seems this is one fundamental reason or how Nepal maintained its sovereign independence and identity. Had this Gorkha soldiers' glue not been there, then perhaps the history of Nepal would have been very different from what we have today. So I think Gorkhas can take great pride in the fact that perhaps it's because of them that Nepal is a sovereign independent country today. Your views?
I think that was the main reason in the Anglo-Gorkha War in 1815, right? When they had a sign a treaty, the Sugol Treaty. The British wanted three things from Nepal: Gorkhas in their army, residency in Kathmandu, and a route to Tibet to meet the gold and silver there. So that was the main reason. But at the same time, Gorkha played a significant, crucial role in making the united India of today as a soldier. Not only as a soldier, but also whenever the British conquered a new land in India, like northwest, northeast, northwest, this area, they always needed somebody there on the border to make sure that who is the boss, this place belonged to us. So the Gorkhas were the ready-made, as I said on the book, Gorkhas were the ready-made solution for all the British problem in India, whether it's soldiering, finding the place, securing the place, making road, working on the mines, everything, building roads, bridges, everything. And the Gorkhas, they all came in big numbers. That was the main reason why the Gorkhas have so many. India has so many Gorkhas in India today. So I think it was the main reason why, like you said, the Nepal is still a sovereign country today. And but of course, as our Gorkha communities are a bit short change in the lacking on education. They don't read history, so they don't talk about their rights. They only talk about themselves and their family and their immediate needs. But of course, this is a big thing for them. So but those Nepali elites who are in the power, they don't want to hear about this because in Nepal, as you can see, there is not many and libraries, museums, and all these archives. They don't keep old records. So they just go and rotten and thrown away. So nobody's interested about the history. So of course, this is this is a thing our community should have asked for, but unfortunately, they don't know this thing. Only after I have written this book, there's very little small number of people are aware of this fact. But of course, for the British, it was the big thing because otherwise they would have bring all the European here, and you can imagine how expensive that would have been, right? So the Gorkhas were the cheap and also loyal, also capable. So that because of the Gorkhas, not only for the making of the India, but also during the partition when the both India and Pakistan had this problems of killing each other. Gorkha were the neutral force who went both sides and collected everything. And also during the this Indian independence, Gorkha soldiers, the Gorkhas, Indian Gorkhas, actually worked in the the Indian National Army to fight against the Gorkhas.
Mr. Tulsigiri's father-in-law, he worked with Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose.
Yeah,
And
there
when
were
I
so
met him,
many
yeah,
guys
when
from
I
the
met him,
army.
he showed me an ID card of the INA signed by Subhash Chandra Bose.
There were thousands of them. And yeah, of course now nobody talk about it because Nepali people don't care. In Nepal, we have a saying, Surya Ast, Nepal must. After sundown, they go and drink and sleep. They don't care about anything. But actually, the Gurkhas, either is from Nepal or India, has a have a big contribution in the making of India. Then this should be realized by the community. Then I think they should be respected for what they are, what they have done. So this is the book was also one another reason for this book was to bring up this hidden side of the story. So at least people who are willing to read a history and know about the fact can have a fact. That was also the reason.
Well, absolutely. On that note of the very important and significant contributions of the
Yeah,
Gorkhas to our subcontinent, I want to thank you. It's been an interesting discussion, and I hope many people who are watching this will go out and buy a copy of the Gorkha Grief, which is published by Vitasta. I
yeah,
don't know if you have a copy there. And I'm sure
yeah,
it'll be very informative, and especially for the young generation, as you said, who
yeah,
don't know much about history.
yeah.
So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much to you, sir, and also the Kalinga Literature Festival for arranging it. It's been my honor, and I'm really please. Thank you very much for your time, everything. Please go read your own history. It's about yourself. It's not about me. I'm already too old for that. I have enough of what I need in my life. So this is all about you. It's about your future, about your history, about your life. So I hope our Nepali Gurkhas, brother and sister from India, especially from Indian subcontinent, will read and appreciate the book. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.